Hello, my name is Malik Abbas Dabu. Welcome to UPfront. On UPfront, we assemble the brightest minds to dissect the most difficult questions. Today we have a litany of issues, but the first amongst them is the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, SSNIT. This is a story which simply will not go away. This story has dominated the news headlines since last year, and it is still in the front burner as far as the news headlines are concerned. What is new? I'm taking a short break. When I come back, I will give you a litany of what has happened, which has brought back the issue of SSNIT and its infamous OBS back into the front burner. Keep watching. You're welcome back. You're watching UPfront. My sincerest apologies for the late start of today's show. But my guest is in. He's the Vice President of Imani Ghana. That's a policy think tank. He is a relentless campaigner against all that is wrong in Ghana. In fact, one can argue he's one of the moral leaders of this country. Kofi Bentel is my guest. Kofi, welcome.
Thank you.
The SSNIT story simply won't die, will it?
No, it won't. And it shouldn't die. It shouldn't die. Look, we can't pretend that these things don't matter. And these are the reasons why we don't have a reason to be poor, but we are still poor. And it is our elite who do these things to us. It is the people who should be defending this country and helping it move forward who do these things to us. So it must not die. We must really get to the bottom of the SSNIT thing and punish people, so these things will stop. And in the case of SSNIT, there are so many angles to it. Look at the people SSNIT has to take care of and how much they don't take care of them. Look at the malfeasance. It's not just a slip here and there. It is grand larceny. It is stealing on a massive scale. And it does not make any sense. There's little corruption here and there, which we should still fight against. But here you see people really go out to loot the country, okay? And the direct effect of these kinds of, malfeasance is on poor people. Pensioners, okay? Instead of doing what you need to do for these people who have worked a lifetime for this country to have a certain life before they depart, you ask them to live where they are, come to your office for their meager pensions, and even that you don't do it well. Then you proceed to spend money like this. I mean, it's obscene. It's absolutely wrong.
Are we not jumping the gun and judging the people even before they have their day in court? And you are a lawyer, you know about the natural rights of every person, and the person is entitled to a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. The people have not been found guilty.
No,
yet.
You see, we are not jumping the gun, and I think it's an important question because people mistake these things. There are matters of fact, and there are matters of law. Money has been stolen and misappropriated at SSNIT. That's a fact.
Established by who?
Oh, again, you see, if this glass of water in all proper places costs 2 cedis, and you come back and you've spent 10 cedis on it, it is a fact that can be verified that you spent 8 cedis more than average. Maybe it was 6 cedis at the end that you paid over the proper price. We'll find that out. But it is a fact that you have overpaid for this thing. The question is, who is at fault? That is both fact and law and circumstance. We will find that out later. But the point that we need to make is that when we find these things, call them for the money has been stolen, misappropriated at SSNIT. You can't tell me that SSNIT with 3 million people to manage needs $100 million for software. That's a matter of fact.
Well, they say it's an operating system.
That's why I'm going where I'm going, that whatever you call it, it cannot make sense that to manage the pension of 3 million people, You need $100 million. It can't make sense. No matter what you do, even if you give me a system that works, it still does not make sense.
Except that PwC, in their review of the operations of SSNIT, in the report that was submitted to the SSNIT board yesterday, says that a large number of the components of this system are operational only partially.
Malik, even if all the components of this system were operational, even if it was working like a dream, I am still making the point. It will never make sense to spend $100 million of a third world country's money to manage the pension of 3 million people. And let me give you a simple example why I'm saying so. Look, the pensions management, in the spectrum of financial services management, pensions management is actually one of the ones that is not very, very heavy duty. Why? Because you pay your money in automatically. Over many years, you don't take anything out. Automatically,
you don't have the opportunity to.
But that's why I'm explaining that pensions management as a part of the financial services spectrum is one of the easiest, because people pay money in. It's just one way for most of their lives. And then after many years, you may pay for 40 years. After many years, then they start drawing a certain amount of money. Let me contrast that with retail banking. With retail banking, you can pay 3 times today into your account. And you can check the ATM for your balance 3 times today. And you can make withdrawals 3 times today. And at 12 p.m., you can make another withdrawal. And you can do that every day. And it will be accurate.
For years.
And it will be accurate. So how do you explain to me that even with retail bankers, they don't use that kind of money to manage the kinds of systems that they have to run, which have to be accurate consistently every time, all the time, even with input and output multiple times in a day. And then you have a system where I pay money into it for 40 years. You don't even give me the opportunity to check my balance once a year. And you need $100 million to buy software to manage the pension of 3 million people. It can never make sense, Malik. So when you bring it from that level to the point where even with that, it is not working, I mean, we must not let this story die.
SSNIT itself budgeted $34 million for this project. And then as time went on, they explained there was the need to do many more things, expand the scope, because if you look at the lawyer's letter, and we will come to this, their argument is that originally when they budgeted $34 million, it was to manage only 400,000, when in fact, SSNIT manages about 3 million pensioners' funds.
So again, it doesn't make sense. You manage 3 million pensioners' funds. Why would you buy a software to manage 400,000? And Malik, anybody with a brain who tells you that to manage 400,000 people's pension, and I've given you the dynamics of pension, you need $30 million. Nobody with a brain will tell you that and expect you to believe them. So look, I'm very agitated about this thing because it's frustrating. And I say, these are people who are supposedly learned, they are supposedly the leaders of this country. They must have a certain pulse on what is going on in the rest of this country. And these people, without stealing, will still have a better life than the average Ghanaian.
Absolutely.
These people have a fiduciary duty, and they are very well paid. They are very well taken care of. It's so frustrating to have these same people who don't need to steal this brazenly. 400,000 people, and you need $30 million. Look, I teach at a university. I can put 4 people together to write a program that will do that work and do it well. I don't brag. I am not bragging. It is not rocket science. So the whole thing is a mess. The point that I'm making is that we should not let SSNIT ride. And we should not treat it like the same way we treat other corruption stories. We go up and down about it, and then nobody gets punished. And in the case of SSNIT, this is not just one. It's been going on for the past 30 years. People just loot SSNIT. We get, talking. We, go back and forth, and then we just leave it alone. Then the next batch comes and loots SSNIT again. You know what's happening. I was involved with the merchant bank situation, and all kinds of SSNIT investments and other things where you look at it, it doesn't make sense. We spend a lot of money, and I'm talking about SSNIT spending a lot of money, supposedly investments, you don't get much out of it, and at the end of the day, they just give it up. Because the money just keeps coming, they just keep stealing it.
When you hear the board say that Yoko has conducted investigations, 4 of the persons who played various roles have been indicted, and Yoko is proposing that they should be charged with causing financial loss to the state, does that give you hope?
That is where I would say the investigation is not complete, so I'm waiting to see. But they should be charged for stealing. They should be charged for other things related to stealing. And yes, causing financial loss. And I hope that the more we go into the issue, there will be more things that will come up. One act can lead to separate charges. And look, if we are serious about fighting corruption, we must make an example. So I hope that by the time we finish, it's not just going to be willfully causing financial loss. In fact, that law suggests that you are not out to steal.
There was no motive.
Exactly. There was no motive. It was inadvertent. But you make decisions which you shouldn't have made, which led to loss. Where there is clearly a motive, an intention, an action, and it doesn't make sense except to, explain it as stealing, it should go beyond just causing financial loss.
Is it not possible to see it in this light? Because if you read the PwC report, there are portions where the report complained or the report observed that the Director General of SSNIT at the time, Mr. Ernest Thompson, when they spent money on this OBS system, some components were not functioning properly, and it was under warranty. And whilst the warranty was still in vogue, he went back to the board and requested that those same components that they paid for, which were not functioning and were still under warranty, should be replaced at an extra cost.
Yes.
And that was done.
Yes.
This may not have been deliberate.
No, there's no way. Malik, if you said this was not deliberate, you are insulting them. You are saying they are that stupid. To say that I bought something from you and you gave me a warranty that it would work. In the first place, whatever I bought from you was extremely overpriced and it did not work. I did not have the presence of mind, the gumption, to just come to you and claim the warranty for buying an overpriced thing that didn't work. Then I come back and pay you extra money to give me the thing you gave me which did not work all over again. So if I say you insult them, what I'm saying is that you don't mean that they didn't have the gumption to see that this was deliberate.
I think Mr. Ernest Thompson has explained in previous interviews to JoyNews that what has happened is wrong scoping on the part of SSNIT officials themselves, which then led the supplier to supplying those things which didn't work and which then warranted them to replace them.
When managers steal money or are grossly incompetent, they obfuscate. They use all kinds of English and all kinds of concepts to try and confuse everybody about what is going on. This has nothing to do with wrong scoping of anything. This has to do with criminal collusion all the way involving everybody.
How do we establish that?
Well, because, Malik, if all of us have been going to the market all the time and we've been buying a phone for 2,000 cedis and we've been doing that for all this while, internationally speaking, and there are others, there is enough evidence that this is the price of this thing, and you go and buy it for 10,000 cedis, and you are supposed to be an intelligent person, have experience, check, and you have all the time to take it back, to have it fixed, to have the price renegotiated, but you don't just buy it for 10,000. When you bought it, you bought the wrong one, it didn't work, and you bought another one. Excuse me, we must be credited with a certain amount of intelligence. This kind of brazen stealing happens because in the past, worse things happened, and nobody went to jail. So we have to start deciding that we won't let just a few people take our country for a run like
this not the
and
point.
Insult us in the process.
You say we should be credited with a certain modicum of intelligence, but if we are that smart and people do these wrongs and get away with it, where is that?
But that's the point I'm making. I'm saying the brazenness of this one is because in the past they've gotten away with it. You know, I went to court challenging SSNIT on some of the things they were doing which were totally unconscionable. When we went to court, we knew that the trustees were the ones who had to hold SSNIT responsible. But we went to court anyway because we are beneficiaries of the trust. And even though we knew the law as lawyers, that the trustees have to be the ones to take it to court, the point we're making to the court, and the judge made a point that he understands our position.
And SSNIT came after you, didn't they?
Well, they came after us. They came after us trying to harass us, and well, they lost that one. But the point is that if the trustees, who have to be the ones protecting the fund, are the ones looting it, what do we do? Do we sit there and wait? No, we have to assert ourselves. So what I'm saying is that this has happened because in the past, similar things happened, nothing happened. So we must not let this die. We cannot have a small country and keep milking our poor people. Cocoa farmers are amongst the most taxed people in this country, amongst the most taxed Ghanaians. If you look at the producer price and the price we pay to them, look at it against the world market price, the difference is a tax. Look at what's happening in cocoa board. And go and look at the average life or the life of an average cocoa farmer. It's terrible. And people sit in Accra with people's monies. Look at what civil servants earn. And they pay these monies over many years. Look at their pensions. All right? And we allow people to just loot the funds. So we must not let this lie. I am not saying A or B is guilty. I am saying stealing has happened. What we need to do is figure out who caused that. And we should not have this situation where we are now going to have all kinds of mercy on all kinds of people who did not have mercy on us.
What should we do?
We should take a very serious view to this. Look at the people who have actually committed the thievery as nation wreckers. They've killed people because there are people, when you just spend a week in front of SSNIT, you know what led Komla Dumo to crusade against SSNIT?
I remember.
He chanced against one of those cases. And look, there's so many of them. We should see these people for who they are and treat them the way we ought to treat them. Otherwise, these kinds of things
Let me
will
read
stop.
a statement from the lawyers of Mr. Ernest Thompson, who was Director General of SSNIT. Just a paragraph. The usual mantra of the management, led by the Director General, has been the spurious allegations intended to deceive the public that the original contract price of 34 million escalated to 72 million without explaining how or what brought about the price escalation, which should actually be the crux of the matter. So there is an explanation.
Oh, Malik, you can explain everything. The question is, does it make sense? All right. And again, I'm not saying somebody is guilty or not. That is for a court to determine. What I'm saying is that if you are managing 3 million people's pension and you ask for $100 million of software, that alone does not make sense. And if you ask to pay $30 million to manage software of 400,000 people, I don't know how you separated the 400,000 from the 3 million. And if you bought something which is under warranty and you overpaid for it, and what you bought did not work, and you still decide to buy the same thing again from the same person and pay again, you are not making sense. Something is amiss. So clearly, a lot of wrong has gone on. Whatever the lawyers have to say, they will have their day in court. What I'm saying as a citizen of this country, that it is unconscionable what has happened in SSNIT. And we should find the people who committed these blunders and take care of them.
The lawyers insist that SSNIT's management has decided to do politics in the process and has adopted as its weapons persecution and victimization of Mr. Ernest Thompson, their client, and has ignored truth, evidence, and facts surrounding the OBS system.
They are guilty of the same thing. They are doing politics, trial in the public domain, throwing words about.
They're just responding to what has happened.
If they are, so I'm saying they are doing the same thing. Look, if you're a lawyer, the arena is in a court. If Ernest Thompson has been slandered, they should sue. If you're a lawyer, the arena is. Indeed, if the SSNIT management is doing politics and whatever it is, in fact, it's in your interest. Because no court is going to uphold the politics over the law. If he is not guilty and people are doing politics, they are undermining their own case. Get into court and prove the innocence of your client. Well, if this is by way of response as in you want to tell the rest of us that there's nothing to it and whatever it is, fine, we've taken notes. The point I'm making is fundamental. And the point is without regard to the outcome of this. It does not have any bearing on whether Mr. Thompson is found guilty or not. The point I'm making as a citizen of Ghana is that it does not make sense for SSNIT to spend that kind of money on just software, especially if the software does not work.
Do the lawyers not have a point when they argue that their client is being tried in the media, and that in their view there's a certain orchestration by the SSNIT management and selected media houses to, for want of, and to use their own expression, to whip up negative public sentiments against their client?
There is always a point whenever an issue is discussed publicly. But I said today, I was telling somebody, if you are not ready for public service, don't go there. When you submit yourself for public service, you submit yourself to scrutiny and public, questioning. So there is no way you will take $100 million of SSNIT money, ordinary people's money, and use it this way and not expect that you'll be discussed publicly. If you are not prepared to do that, you shouldn't have gone there. All that being said, the management of SSNIT cannot find Mr. Thompson guilty. They cannot jail Mr. Thompson. They cannot fine him. So if all they will do is to insult him or subject him to a trial by media, then Mr. Thompson is happy because he will sleep in his house, switch off his radio, and live a happy life. His problem is what will happen in court. That is what his lawyers should focus on. Those who go into public office, which is part of what you want to discuss today, and they don't want anything about the public, issues regarding the public office to be discussed publicly, they don't belong in public office. I have not given up myself for public office. And part of the reason is because I don't want that scrutiny. Okay? So if you go into public office, expect that, especially when you manage poor people's money, they will question every penny you spend, and they have a right to do so.
And talking about questioning every penny you spend, one of the things that the current Director General said yesterday at a press conference was that they managed to save 3.7 million Ghana cedis, money which, as a result of removing what they called ghost names from SSNIT systems, that there were people who were receiving pensions or money that they ought not to receive, and through that, they saved a lot of money, 3.7. Again, he said he came to meet a budget of 7.3 million for travels and accommodation for SSNIT staff for the year 2017. That has been allocated. They brought it down to 1.9. At the end of the year, they spent 1.9. That means that if probably he hadn't come to the office or the management had not changed, 7.3 million would have been spent on travels and accommodation.
Did he tell you his salary?
No.
Do you have an idea how much he's paid?
No.
Do you have an idea the perks he's entitled to as Managing Director of State? Do you have an idea?
Absolutely not.
Right. Now, it is part of your normal duty to weed out people who are dead or do not qualify for SSNIT pensions. It's just part of your work. And I have made the point consistently that if SSNIT was managing itself properly, that work will not be difficult. Because today there's a lot of biometrics. There are all kinds of technologies by which people can collect their pensions only when they are alive. The process SSNIT uses is, in fact, recently they sent people to people's houses
to go and
check whether they are alive.
We like manual things.
That's extremely ineffective, inefficient. Now, point I want to make is, it is part of the managing director's job description to do that. So if you did it, you don't deserve any commendation. Because if you check his pay and his specs, you understand that this is not much. And then it is also part of your job as managing director to make sure that the resources of the organization are not dissipated wantonly. So if for any reason you can tell that certain things were not necessary and you cut them down, maybe you should be commended for doing your job, but you should not make noise about it and expect us to be happy simply because you did a job you were being paid for. Now, I don't think he intends to use that as an excuse for the gross malfeasance that has happened under him. Because all that you talked about comes down to just about $2 million. Now, I've explained that was part of his job for which he's paid.
But this is actually what the current Director General has said, not Ernest Thompson.
Well,
it's the current Director General who's making these claims.
Same points. Same points. That is his job. If he came into office and he saw all these things and didn't do anything, he will not be worth his seat. So it's the same point. I don't discriminate on persons. If an accountant has done this, I would have said the same thing. If the current director general is doing this, it's the same thing. I expect him to do things in such a way that this does not become necessary when the next person comes on.
Absolutely.
But it does not excuse any other actions that have been taken. I can understand that maybe he will be saying these things to show that the previous management was profligate or whatever.
Which is the reason why the lawyers will say management is doing politics.
Again, Malik.
And they may have a basis.
No, they don't. If you inherit a public office as Malik, and you go and find out that the resources of that office were being dissipated wantonly, it is proper for you to cut it and fix that problem. And because it is a public office, it may be necessary for you to make a comment on that, especially if you are asked. That is why we are fighting for the right to information. That is why we are fighting for these things. Because anytime management changes hands, there should be a scrutiny of the previous administration. It is necessary. And I'll repeat, if you are not prepared for the scrutiny of public office, stay in the private sector.
Talking about ghosts, just in relation to what he said, one of the big stories dominating the headlines for the past few weeks is, again, ghost names in Parliament. So, the Criminal Investigations Department of the Ghana Police Service is claiming that some MPs who also doubled as ministers under the previous government, under President John Mahama's government, took double salaries, i.e. they took their salaries both as legislators and as executive. In the CID's opinion, this constitutes some criminality. The minority MPs who are being hauled before the CID for questioning contend that this is witch hunting and that this is a government which is under pressure and it is looking for a leeway out of the pressure. So it simply just raked this up to divert attention. It's simple, pure propaganda.
Well, the rest of us also think none of them is correct. I don't think the minority is right to say the government is under pressure and is trying to divert attention. I don't think so at all.
But they are,
no.
Are they not right? Because the government was under pressure. Because
where is the pressure?
The minority were holding press conferences, they were holding demonstrations. The government
Which part of that is not normal in government?
Well, but governments don't like it.
In the past government, we were on the streets demonstrating. Okay, so press conferences are nothing. It's a normal part of every, democratic system. So I don't see where they are coming from. And the government also, if the CID is investigating, they should leave it at that. Okay, if you are investigating, leave it at that. Don't be making pronouncements about criminality if you are at the point of investigation. We have a situation where people are alleged to have taken double salary. Again, you see, I have always said that there's almost nothing in this country that we should be running. Almost everything in this country should be transformed. And that fundamental level is the source of many of the problems we have. So now you have the politicians arguing about it. I totally see a different viewpoint. Why do we have this problem at all? Somebody took double salary? Did it happen? How did it happen? I'm not even interested in that. This government has the highest number of ministers ever in the history of Ghana. 110. Our parliament has had the highest number of parliamentarians ever in our history. 275. 385. Malik, a university graduate who did just accounting can handle the payroll of 375 people if you give him 1 month. A university graduate without experience can sort out the payroll of 375 public officials in a month. That is the fundamental problem here. Why do we have this problem? And it's not just this government. In fact, I found out early this year from some of my friends in government that they say their names are still not in the payroll system. Yeah. And so they are not being paid. And I said, how? You got elected more than a year ago. So whose job is it to put you on that payroll? Walmart has 2.1 million employees. They pay them every 2 weeks. They are present in over 100 locations. They pay them every time, on time, accurately, all the time. You have 385 people. You've had over a year. And go and see how many people are supposed to be processing that payroll. A single private accounting company in this country can sort that out. I have a theory. The politicians don't want that.
Why?
Well, I think it's because of moral hazard. And when I say moral hazard, what I'm saying is that people have a certain mindset by which they will take advantage of this system if they get there.
You have a very bleak opinion of our politicians.
I don't have a bleak opinion of our politicians. I look at action and I make a conclusion. And here's the action. The politicians are in charge of ensuring that their pay will be sorted out. And by the way, every politician's pay must be public. The pay of the United States president is public.
But that's the United States.
Oh, this is Ghana.
In the United States, people
they have trillions in their economy.
People don't
we are poor.
queue.
We are poor. So we need to manage our resources even more. And the principle should be clear. When you are managing poor people's money, you are being paid with poor people's money. Okay. Recently, the levy on Kayaye, the local levy, was removed. But essentially, Kayaye were paying taxes in this country. You can call them local taxes. They were taxes. Okay. So that principle should be clear. And that's again why we are fighting for the right to information. The pay of every politician must be public. How that is computed is not rocket science. It must be known. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why we think that the constitution should be amended so that parliamentarians remain parliamentarians. There should be no way for a parliamentarian to become a minister.
That won't happen.
Well, it will happen.
When?
It will happen. It may take time, but it will happen. The conceptualization of it, the common sense of that proposition is very clear. Nobody argues about it anymore.
The people who take that decision, it is not in their interest to do that.
Well, that's why you and I become important because, like I said, there's a moral hazard in our political class.
Are we sufficiently interested in
I am,
and
I hope I can get more people interested enough. But we need to appreciate that the politicians will never do it.
Individual, a single rabble rouser.
When we start getting people onto the streets, they will realize that it's not just an individual. I articulate the views. Sometimes people know what they feel and think, but they've not put it in words. And what some of us hope we will do is to put those things in words. And one of the things I'm putting in words is that it is not in our interest as a democracy for parliamentarians to be crossing into the executive because it creates so many problems. One of them is double pay. But that being said, it is still not a difficult thing to know the pay of a public official, 385 of them, exactly how it should be, and to advance that money to them.
Is our constitution a problem? I ask this question because you have a constitutional provision that says Article 71 people should be paid under a certain system. So you have MPs being paid by the Parliamentary Service, ministers are being paid by the Controller and Accountant General's Department. Now, when you have an MP who has become a minister, there's a certain cross-fertilization. You also have a situation where we have to set up a committee. Sometimes this committee doesn't get set up until after 4 years when the people would have been appointed. So their salaries are determined 4 years after they were appointed. This is a constitutional provision that puts us in this situation.
Our constitution is a best effort informed by our history. And that best effort also was informed by certain fears which were not founded. I repeat, our constitution is not the problem. This is the only constitution we've had and run for over 2 decades. But it is a best effort and it was informed by our history. And some of that history informed certain fears which were not founded. One of the fears that led to this particular situation was when a minister brought a budget to Parliament.
You're talking about Liman's
yes,
government.
And Parliament refused the budget. Now, because of that, that fear was created that if you don't have enough parliamentarians in the executive, then budgets will be refused. That doesn't make sense. In fact, that's the job of Parliament. The job of Parliament is to scrutinize to the point that if they are not convinced, they will refuse the budget. So that fear was not founded, but all of that informed our Constitution. I've made a number of statements, and you need to draw out my conclusion. The Constitution is not the problem. It was a best effort, and it served us well. But being what it is and what has fed into it, we need to now go back and take out the things that we realize are not good for us.
Did we do that when we did a review?
The review was conceptually wrong. And that's why it's stuck. Okay. So the executive...
But how did the whole country institute a system led by a respected a judge.
I don't mean to cut you.
The
but
executive secretary
the premise
was a
is where the problem.
respected lawyer.
It is not the whole country that did it. And that's why it's stuck. It is the president that did it. The president proceeded, set up a commission, and went ahead.
So the Supreme Court judge who led this process, the executive secretary, who is a respected professor of law, we didn't see this.
Well, we saw it. But
all the jurists in this country, nobody saw it, probably apart from Professor Stephen Kukwasari, who insisted that this process was wrong.
And you
apart from him,
so you see when the minority can be right. Indeed, some of us question that thing. Honestly, I question it, but I hoped it would work. Okay, ab initio is wrong for the president to initiate that. It's jurisprudentially catastrophic for a president to initiate an amendment of the Constitution. That means the president can get up and amend the Constitution and make himself like president. So you can tell that conceptually was a problem. Okay, so there were all kinds of issues. But personally, I was hoping that given the approach and everything, we will rally around this thing and make it work. Then I had a shock of my life. There were some of those things that were proposed which I totally disagreed with. Then I realized that, look, when you come out of a poisoned root, sometimes your fruit is not going to be wholesome. And so Kukwasari was right. And that is why we are stuck where we are stuck. It does not mean we should not attempt a constitutional review. Let's just do it right. Because our constitution clearly has served us, but it is clearly also showing us that it is not fit for purpose going forward. And some of the problems that it is bringing up are problems that will only be magnified over time. We have 275 parliamentarians right now. It is the Electoral Commission that determines the number of parliamentarians we have. And that cannot be right. So we clearly have to stop somewhere.
Is that even the Electoral Commission?
Problem.
Because if the local government minister decides to do sometimes what they do, gerrymandering, and just create assemblies and create them in a manner which forces the Electoral Commission to expand the assembly, then in reality, it's actually not the Electoral Commission.
Well, yes, but so that's another angle to the situation. But it's revealing the point I'm making, that it's a good enough constitution, but it's gotten to the point where it's not fit for purpose. We should stop and fix it. Otherwise, going forward, we're going to have very serious problems with the same constitution. I don't want to rubbish it. It's done a good job. And like I said, this country has never had a constitution that has been this durable. But it is not a perfect document. It is a product of our history, and some of the fears that informed it are not founded.
Do you share the minority's concern that the investigations being conducted by the CID into this alleged double salary issue further undermines the strength and the influence of Parliament?
I totally disagree with them. Look, any investigation into malfeasance gives positive energy to any system.
The minority leader argues that this could have been done by a combined team of the Parliamentary Service, the Auditor General, the Controller and Accountant General's Department. He doesn't see why the CID is involved.
I agree with him. This could have been done by one person sitting at the Controller and Accountant General, one accountant. It is 385 people's pay. Malik, even if you are not an accountant, I have no doubt you can solve this problem. There is a certain formula for calculating pay. It is not rocket science. You can figure it out. If you are told, you can understand it. There are 385 people. If we give you 1 week, you will sort it out. The difference is the little things going back and forth. It is not rocket science in a month. One accountant sitting at the Controller and Accountant General's Department could have solved this problem. This is the problem with politicians. And personally, I don't think we should have made such a meal out of this issue. My worry is that it is not this government, it's not the previous government. They, play their, baton changes, and they keep this messed up system in place because of the moral hazard.
Because does it serve them?
It serves their negative inclinations. Why I say so is that if you, Malik, were paid double, at least you would ask a question. Okay, now why has this thing gone on? It takes an investigation like this. And there are indications, I use my words well, indications that certain people actually had animals. They wanted to game the system. There are suggestions that people were using different signatures and different accounts.
This is an allegation or a claim made by the majority.
Which is why I say there's a problem with politicians, because a technical issue now becomes a political issue. But whatever it is, this is not one of the big things in this world which should have taken us all you know,
I have 30
from
seconds.
our normal work.
In that 30 seconds, your opinion on the decision of the Supreme Court throwing out Dr. Dominic Ayine, former Deputy Attorney General, who challenged the legality, the constitutionality of the appointment of Special Prosecutor Martin Amidu?
I can't answer it in 30 seconds. Let me explain why. I agree with the decision not because of the legal technicality. I agree with the decision because I think that case is moot. But the legal technicality under which he was thrown out, I don't agree with. Because we operate under something called the modern purposive approach in this country, which is to the effect that even if you make technical mistakes, we should not use that to throw out the substance of the matter you are coming, you know, with. Based on that, I think he shouldn't have been thrown out. But it is the frivolity of the case itself. And at the Supreme Court, the law is not the only consideration. There's law, there is policy, there are so many other things that they have in their consideration. So I don't second guess them. I think...
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Right. Mr. Kofi Bentele is the Vice President of Imani. We have been discussing a gamut of issues, all bordering on corruption and impropriety. My name is Malik Abbas Dabu. This has been Upfront. Until we come your way again next week, take care. Bye-bye.